Today is Monday, May 7th, and this is the planning meeting of the Pine-Richland School Board. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin tonight, please join me in a moment of silence in recognition of the life of Bradley Maslanka, who was a senior who attended Pine-Richland for most of his education. Bradley loved being outdoors, running, taking walks, and camping. Please join me in a moment of remembrance. Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Thank you. Mr. Lyons?
Here.
Ms. Misbach?
Here.
Mr. Kashani?
Here.
Dr. Campbell? Mr. DiTullio?
Here.
Ms. Goebel?
Here.
Dr. Meyer? Mr. Moy?
Here.
Dr. Mihaly?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to recognition of visitors. If anyone would like to address the board, they're welcome to do so at this time. Please state your name and where you're from.
I'm Laura Oland, and I live at 414 Lenox Court. As the parent of a grown-up runner who graduated in 2013, Jared, and now a young runner who will graduate in 2022, my personal experiences with middle school and high school cross-country at Pine-Richland have always been excellent. And as a previous school director, this activity was always at the top of my recommendation to other parents in terms of both the social and physical development. However, early this year, as a new booster parent, I learned the sport was without a high school head coach when all the families received a strongly worded resignation letter from the coach selected last year when the girls and boys teams combined. As the resignation letter was not straightforward and there was not any communication from the district in the weeks to follow, myself, in partnership with the president of the boosters, contacted both this coach and the previous boys head coach to understand the recent events, and most importantly, the future of the program. What began as a few open-ended questions turned into an onion which had more layers than I ever expected. Sadly, at the core of this onion was not the interest of the students or the performance of the coaches. When talking to the community, both these coaches were held in the highest esteem by the families and children entrusted in their care. The decade plus of incredible experience of every athlete who participated in the program was authentic. I approached administration to advocate for the athletes as cross-country was, and is even more so now, in high jeopardy of rapidly declining if it does not maintain its consistent, high-quality leadership. My objective is not to assign accountability, although as I peeled back that onion, I did find a complex web of legal, personnel, interpersonal, and staffing issues. Having by now spoken to most of the actual sources regarding this sensitive information, I know that all data clearly indicates Mr. Connolly is a high-performing, valued member of the Pine-Richland team. And I post a statement being asked by many parents. It is clear that Mr. Connolly is the most qualified in this position as it was posted last year, and he was an equal contender according to the statements made by the athletic director at the meeting for parents. Why is his appointment not being announced now for the program stability? My point then, as it is now, is as humans, mistakes are made. The error lies when they are compounded versus acknowledged. So in summary, it is now many months later and the students must begin summer training soon. It is common knowledge Mr. Connolly will be honored to be coached again. We as parents all assume the recently posted internal job description is just a formality to now approve him. This belief is reinforced also by the message that went out from the athletic department this weekend finally announcing a parent meeting on the topic. And as a side note, as one of the primary initial board advocates for this collaborative communication meeting with the athletic department and the community around all new coaching positions, a combination meeting does not even seem to allow for transparency to all athletes. especially as cross-country, girls volleyball, and golf, which are so diverse in their history, needs, culture, and participants, does not really make sense. Either parents will be left waiting while one topic is addressed, or the meeting is really ineffective. But speaking for myself, I encourage each of you to understand Mr. Connolly's classroom reputation as it matches his record on the track. To me, the coach who is a role model in the classroom and the teacher who is a mentor outside the 9 periods a day is the most prized asset to the district and to the board. Going into negotiations, it is important to act with respect to anyone who impacts our children, from the family to the staff. This vote for me stands for more than just this supplemental, but the concepts of respect and being student-centric, both which were critical to me and are still for PR to remain its best. So I thank you all for your time and service.
Thank you, Mrs. Oland.
Good evening. My name is Mark Hunkley. I live at 209 Crawford Court, and I'm here also to speak on behalf of the cross-country program for Pine-Richland. I am the current booster president for cross-country. I am also a track coach for the middle school here. I'm very passionate about running cross-country and track, and like Mrs. Oland said, it's an incredible program for the students here at Pine-Richland. And a year ago, a new coach was approved. I know it was a very difficult decision from what I hear. There were 2 great cross-country coaches for Pine-Richland just a little over a year ago. One was a girls' coach, one was a boys' coach. When the programs were combined, unfortunately, one of them got the job, one of them didn't. The 2 finalists were the 2 previous cross-country coaches. The first, as I was voted to be the new booster president for cross country in January, unfortunately the first thing I had to do was announce that the coach had resigned and forward on his letter to the team. I have great respect for both Mr. Jetson and Mr. Connolly and know they are both great coaches. But when Mr. Jetson resigned, I thought that Mr. Connolly then would be offered the position as coach again because he had 12 successful years as head coach. The students loved him. I've heard so many great things about him from students, parents, coaches from other teams. I'm very connected in the running community. And I knew that the position was supposed to be posted, or recently was posted a couple of weeks ago. And I was surprised when Mr. Connolly was not named head coach. So I'm here to vouch for Mr. Connolly. He is a great coach. He's a great runner. He's very caring. He cares about the students. I have talked to many current runners, former runners, alumni who even graduated 10 years ago. They all have incredible things to say about how Mr. Connolly not only helped them in running, but in life. Mr. Connolly is very committed and passionate about the program, and he is definitely the right choice going forward to lead this program to the next level. We have a really good cross-country program here, and it's competitive. And Mr. Connolly coaches to the individual. He'll help every person on that team achieve their best. We also have a goal to the boosters and everybody part of the cross-country program is to make our program grow. An example is North Allegheny. They have the best cross-country program around. We want ours to be just as good, if not better. We need to create a whole culture of running and having more people on the team, more people involved with the boosters and supporting the team. And I personally know that Mr. Connolly wants those things also, and he actually has used the NA model as a good model to follow. And I would ask that you give him the chance to coach as head coach, not with 2 head coaches, but just as the head coach himself of this program, because I think it was hard having 2 head coaches before, for them both to agree on how they can lead this program to be the best that it can be. And so, like Laura, Mrs. Oland had said, Coach Connolly would like to be coach again. He has an exemplary record, and he has a lot of great plans for the program. So I urge you to appoint Mr. Connolly as head coach. It's right now, the date is May the 7th. School lets out in a couple of weeks. It's urgent that the kids know who their cross-country coach is in May before school is out. we need to have summer conditioning for them, summer training. There has to be a meeting this month before school is out, after school, for the 8th grade students who are moving up to high school, and also for the high school students. And on a personal level, I do have a daughter who's in 8th grade who's very excited about cross country in 9th grade. And she has met Mr. Conley a few times at races. Or when he helped us with our Wexford Ram Run, his participation and his having the team participate and help us volunteer has meant so much to that race that raises money for our schools. I know, and I have 3 other children who are runners, and I would like to see them have Mr. Conley as coach. I know he is the best candidate, and I really hope that the cross country position is filled before school is out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunkley. Correspondence, Ms. Williams.
Thank you. The following people contacted the board regarding cross-country: Noah Adams, Tim Converse, Marcus and Rosa Fanny, Jane Harris, Janine Hunkley, Mark Hunkley, Sarah Montella, Julie Murphy, Camden Sarver, Dan Sarver, David Vaccarello, and Rob Waltrip.
Thank you. Item 1.04 is a motion to approve the minutes as listed.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. And item 2.01 is our strategic plan update focusing on STAR 360 and COGAT 7. Dr. Silval.
Thank you very much. So for those who were here at the committee meeting earlier, we did talk a little bit about the gifted program and how the COGAT has supported that. So I'm going to speak to that first and then transition into how that meets the instruction within the classroom with STAR 360. So we had embedded the COGAT, the Cognitive Abilities Test, for the first time this year as a universal screener in grades 2 and 5 so that we could identify those learners with gifted abilities and those who may be in need of enrichment. So by assessing the students, we were then able to look at the data and we were able to identify kids to go through our screening process, which then does dovetail into the use of the achievement battery within STAR 360 for both reading and math. And we have revised the gifted matrices to implement both the COGAT as well as the STAR in identifying students who are high performing as well as showing need through the ability to then be assessed further for gifted services and programming. We discussed earlier, too, that that's a part of the MTSS model, so the multi-tiered systems of support, where it looks like a hierarchy, and you're able to work through from Tier 1, which is the classroom, in terms of what the students may need, into Tier 2 and 3, where we're looking at enrichment opportunities, differentiated assignments, and acceleration at the 3rd level. So ultimately, throughout those the use of these assessments, we've been able to identify students that in the past may not have readily risen to the surface because now we're universally screening them across that grade level. So a student who may be achieving well, but maybe isn't asking for more, might not have been identified as someone who would require a need to be enriched further. But now we are able to see that, and there are several students in grades 2 and 5 who are progressing through that sequence to be assessed for gifted services. In addition, we did buy the COGAT as well, a little pocket of licenses, so that across the other grade levels we'd be able to use a similar measure in identifying students with needs. So again, it happens universally in 2 and 5, but we're utilizing that measure across the boards to assist our students. We will be rolling out in 2018-19 the new matrices as well as the gifted education plan that we've revised that show how they integrate within that system. So that'll be available on our website for parents to see and be able to understand how that whole process comes together. So as I mentioned, STAR 360, and we have a couple attachments there. At the very first image there, just as a reminder that it is a computer adaptive assessment that we are giving to all of our students, K to 6, and then in 7th grade reading as well. And it is also for students who are in the upper secondary, so 8th through 12th grade, who are in need of supports. So if they're receiving academic support, they also take this as a progress monitoring measure, although we are utilizing it primarily as a universal screener, again, to understand the needs of our students. So they take this assessment, and it helps us understand where they are. One of the benefits is that it produces a scaled score, so the number that is there rolls across grade levels. So wherever a child is performing, you're able to map it to that grade level and see which percentile that corresponds to. So that really helps us understand when a child is performing very high in one grade level, what it may be the equivalent to in an upper grade level, for instance, as they're assessing. It will reflect up to 2 years above or 2 years below their current grade level in terms of the standards as it goes through. And as they answer questions correctly, the questions become more difficult and increase along that progression of skills. And likewise, if they miss a question, it would also move down a level to reflect their true scores. So the students have actually taken this assessment 3 times this year in those grade levels. There will be a 4th assessment for those students who are in the progress monitoring portion so that we have a nice idea of where they are closing out the year, to also set goals for their IEPs in some cases in the coming year. The kind of model that you see there in the corner talks about how the assessments actually impact the instructional planning that can occur, and there are resources that are embedded within the Renaissance platform, which is the company, parent company for STAR, where teachers can look up by skill progressions. If you see at the bottom portion of the screen there, it suggests, based on a child's performance, which skill would be the next one to target for that child to increase their knowledge and grow. And then the teachers can go into this database and look up by skill particular resources that they can download and implement with the child. So it does require additional direct instruction. They are not computer-based assessments per se, but it does map right into our current curriculum, and they can utilize the resources we have now, or even tap into things like the ALEX program that we have for math, that is a computer enrichment and remedial tool that is differentiated based on a child's level of need. So we wanted to show you, too, within the system, we've been sending home to the parents the reports that we have that are particularly the parent report designed to give a very high-level overview, a summary of the student's performance by scaled score, percentile rank, et cetera. But that screenshot, which is within the PDF embedded in board docs, gives you an idea that we have several documents that we can be utilizing. The teachers have primarily focused on the instructional planning report, because it does map directly to those standards and skills, and we're able to understand what competencies are next for a child. And if you scroll down just a slight bit, you can notice that this is a report that was for a 4th grade child. It gives you their instructional reading level, a zone of proximal development, so the right area where we could scaffold them to be just out of reach to get enough challenge that it keeps them growing. And that even maps to a tool online where parents can look up books by that level, by interest topic for a child, and then help even enrich them from the home environment as well. So we're finding that this report is extremely helpful for us as educators. We know that the parent report has the scaled score and percentile ranks, and something that our district data team is reflecting on now is what types of reporting would we like to include in the future, because we now have given it 3 times and have growth data as well that we can project. So sharing some of those pieces of information could be beneficial to parents as well, and we're going to meet prior to the end of the school year with that committee to look at those and make some recommendations for the coming year. But that's something that's on our mind because I think it could be valuable to the students. So down at the very bottom of that, just to give you an idea, once we give the COGAT assessment, the STAR 360 assessments, classroom-based assessments, the end-of-year book test for math, those sorts of things, we can aggregate all of that data within a system that we have here at the district level called Performance Plus. And so that pulls together students' performance across several assessments, quarter grades, et cetera, and we can run them next to each other and even generate things like an assessment rank report, which helps us with our math placement processes. It also allows us to run reports, so when the counselors come in and they're trying to understand when they're completing the gifted matrix process, how a child performed, they can quickly type in a student's name, get a great summary of all their information, and are able to compare it. And I know it's hard to see from where you are now, but if you are to use that PDF and blow it up, the one thing that is really helpful, this is for that same 4th grade child who is performing at a higher level. And the thing that I like about it is when you look at the assessments on the left-hand side, you can see the STAR Math and the STAR Reading and how it's been given across the fall, the winter, and the spring. And that child's scaled score, as shown on the right side, has grown each time. So what we're really after, this is an ideal case where we have a child who is performing above grade level, but we're continuing to meet the instructional needs of the child to see growth across that entire year in progression. So the teachers are really working on this. If we could bring up the other attachment, there's one other component I wanted to show you. So as we moved to STAR 360, we really wanted to understand what it would look like when implemented ideally. And so that is reflected in the far right column where we're looking at that stage 3 integrated use of the tool for the purposes of changing and modifying instruction. So the highlighted components are what we worked on when we had our training session in this spring with our Renaissance coach. He came out and we had face-to-face time with the teachers, and they were able to take a look in the system and really understand how to access these things, and they practiced mapping it to those skill progressions so that they would be able to design something for the student that really meets their needs. So they're well-versed now in how to access the reports, and we're still working on the integration piece and reflecting any of the enrichment components that we can within that unit-based curriculum. So that's just sort of a snapshot of where we are. There's still lots of work to be done, and in this initial implementation year, we're happy with where we are, but of course there are continuous steps that we can take for improvement as we go forward.
Just to add a couple of comments, we're heading into the 4th year of the current strategic plan. One of the elements of this, our strategic plan, and it really does guide our action, guides our decision, but you'll see the same topic in year after year. And the idea behind that is, and can you go back to that last slide? You know, we spent time identifying the need for universal screeners. Then we spent time evaluating what was out there to determine what would best meet our needs, STAR 360, COGAT 7. Then we're in year 1 of implementation. But the reality is we're still scratching the surface of how these tools can be used and how they can support teachers and decisions within the classroom. So as we think, believe it or not, begin to think about our next strategic plan, this same idea of deepening the same topic year over year and not just hitting it and then moving on to another one. It's going to be when we're deeply understanding what comes out of STAR 360, when we feel confident, which is why this particular document, it's written for teachers. So it is so if you look in, for example, the 4th column, integrated use, the teacher can create an account through Renaissance U and is capable of doing this. The teacher can access the library of PDF materials. The teacher. So we're trying to write our training around the skills and competencies the teacher's going to need to have in order to then implement with students. So again, this concept of not a mile wide, inch deep, but really finding out what's important and then trying to drill year after year in order to get to that level is where we're headed.
Any other comments? I do have one, Dr. Sobalt. So with three tests or assessments under the belt, at this point, one thing that's missing in the parent reports is that the old tests had, right, was your progress on the 3 tests. So it sounded like that's going to be considered now that you have that before the end of the school year about how to report that data and show trend data.
Right, so it took till the 3rd test until they would have the student growth percentiles, which is actually a report that they will produce, and it helps us, know where things are going. But yes, we're thinking about how do you do that without saying, okay, Mr. Lyons, pull out your last 3 reports and compare them across, time. Is there a way to capture that better? So we're looking at that because there are, it's like 12 reports that we could be picking from, and to find that right level that's not so deep and detailed that it really doesn't help. We really want to get that high-level summary, but that growth piece is extremely important.
I appreciate that effort.
Sure.
And I have one question which may not be answered tonight, but I'll throw it out there. And so as I was looking at the assessment, preparing for the meeting, or looking at the review, I wasn't able to answer my own question. The question I was asking is, what data should I be asking, or should I see now that we're at this point in the implementation? So for previous universal, we didn't really have a universal screener analogous to COGAT 7. So that may be a place where I would want to see that data. Or do I want to see percentage and identifications of gifted broken down by gender or race, ethnicity? I would challenge you to think about that a little bit, and to come up with what this now gives us the ability to generate in terms of data, if there is useful information there, and what would be appropriate for the board. I don't have an answer yet, but that was where I was going now that we have that.
Yeah, and we will spend more time with that. But just as an example, the COGAT 7, when given at whole grade levels, should be an initial data point that helps us more accurately determine students who require additional testing, and then have a more accurate qualification rate for gifted testing. And so again, a parent might request their child be tested, but we now have a mechanism to try to
Identify.
trigger additional testing for any student. And so those are examples of measures. We're still working on that, but that's one piece of it.
Right, and it may be a number of students identified through exclusively the universal screener versus teacher or parent or self-identification, things like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
keep that in mind. I know there's a lot of data there, so.
Yeah,
I
for
want us
instance,
to-
at the 5th grade level, we had 30 students flagged to be identified or to look at that who had not previously been identified gifted. So it is catching students. So it's doing what we designed it to do. But we'll look at that and
I
figure
think
out
next
what-
time we talk about this,
Sure.
let's see some data.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Fantastic work, though. Although a planning meeting, we do, as is our custom, occasionally have some action items this evening. Item 3.01 is a motion to approve personnel items as attached.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
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 Motion carries. Item 3.02 is a motion to approve the list of employees for the extended school year for 2018.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries. Item 3.03 is the second reading of Policy 109 on resource materials.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
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 And item 3.04 is our second reading of Policy 011, Principles of Governance and Leadership.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I will mention Ms. Williams' wonderful work here with our Decide cards facing in to remind us about all the positive ways we deliberate. Any other discussion? All those in favor say yes.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Kashani, Finance?
4.01, at the voting meeting, we will be approving financial reports and also some budget transfers, which are detailed in 4.02. And then lastly, we'll be voting to approve the A.W. Beatty 2018-2019 budget.
I just wanted to say something about the, not about the budget specifically, but the process is that even though Ginny and I go to these meetings as representatives of the board, they always remind us that that actually the Joint Operating Committee of Beatty is 81 board members. So that everyone has the opportunity to review the budget and then put their vote in on the ballot, and then we will send in the full individual ballot as well as a full reconciliation of that.
So board members, each board member here in Pine-Richland votes
Will vote on it,
individually for the
correct.
budget,
Yes.
rather than us reaching a,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just add a quick comment about the Beatty budget also? So the difference for 18-19 is about $36,000 more, and that number is driven by the number of students. It's an average student attendance over a certain period of time. So as enrollment increases of Pine-Richland students, we would see a corresponding increase in the tuition cost to send students there.
Right. And we've gone, actually, I just looked at it, in the last 5 years, we were down about 31, 32 average attendance, and we're up to like 68 or so. So it has come up over the last 5 years.
Thank you. Dr. Mihalik, would you jump in for Dr. Meyer's absence on academic achievement? I think there are just a couple updates
Sure.
from administration, really.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Yeah, this is an information item. It's over the course of the 2017-2018 school year, committees of teachers and administrators evaluated curriculum resources for students in grades K through 5 mathematics, chemistry, physical science, and advanced placement physics. And the following resources will continue to be on display in the Pine-Richland High School Library, DeWitt Conference Room, and Richland Public Library until Friday, May 18th. So the mathematics K through 5 curriculum honors chemistry, academic chemistry, physical science, and AP physics. And a formal motion to purchase these resources will be added to the May 21st board agenda.
Thank you.
And then the second item there is Academic Achievement Committee met on April 30th to review and discuss the in-depth program reviews for mathematics and business computer science departments. Copies of the in-depth program review summaries are attached to the agenda.
I was unable to attend, but I heard great things about that meeting and the level of engagement. I want to point right to the last E, and I want to elevate the people on the board and the administration that demonstrated those ideas of positive engagement and positive deliberation. So thank you for those who were there. Thank the administration and staff that provided the work and support for these in-depth program reviews. I know we are seeing but the tip of an iceberg of work when we see these presentations, so thank you all.
Yeah, if I could add my thanks. So last week on the 30th, we had 5 members of the board. We had a totally different seating arrangement. We had 14 members of our professional staff here, building-based administrators, district-level administrators, and the comments after the academic achievement meeting about the engagement of the board members, the fact that it was so evident that the reports were read in advance, questions and input were insightful, and not just what was in the presentation, but other areas of expertise, questions to probe or ask, and the staff members who were there commented on that level of engagement. Then on May 2nd, I think it was, we had a mindfulness training here. That was a first exposure to some concepts related to stress management and the potential benefit of certain practices and skills to help staff members, students potentially manage stress and increase focus in their work. We had 2 members of the board willing to participate in that initial training, and the same comments were there. We had, the board was represented in a very engaged, meaningful way that is being noticed by members of our staff. So again, on behalf of all of the staff, not just the administration, on behalf of the staff, thank you for your engagement, because that makes all the difference in the world. So thank you.
Buildings and grounds, Mr. DiTullio, would you please?
Good job.
All informational. Item 6.01 is a motion. Whoop, sorry. I'm kind of locked here. Well, it's a motion to approve purchase of custodial supplies through CoStars, but it's locking up. But there is an attachment that lists all of the pricing for the custodial supplies. Sorry, this is going to be a little choppy. My computer's kind of acting up here. Item 6.02 is a motion at the regular meeting to approve the purchase of carpeting for both the middle school and Hance Elementary from Shaw Industries Group, and style and pricing and all of the quotes are also attached. I don't know why okay. Thank you. All right, here we go. Item 6.03 is going to be a motion at the regular May meeting to approve proposal from Redstone Acoustical Flooring Company to replace the flooring in several classrooms at Wexford Elementary. It's going to be about $13,000 in total, and the flooring quote is attached. Item 6.04 will be a motion to approve painting at the middle school auditorium. Proposal from BP Construction, Inc. to paint the auditorium at the middle school in the amount of $73,075. Kind of going through these. If anyone wants to comment, jump in. But item 6.05 is the motion to approve the replacement of the burner for the hot water boiler at the high school. The amount is $9,000, and you think in July we wouldn't have to replace it, but it's going to get cold sooner or later. And item 6.06 is going to be a motion to approve the replacement of 2 combo ovens at the Pine-Richland High School cafeteria. I would love to have these in my house, but way out of my budget. But the total price of those, I think it came in, the total package was somewhere around $50,000. But if I click on everything, it's
Yeah.
well, yours may not. And then the final one for buildings and grounds is item 6.07, and it's a renewal of our motion to approve the renewal of our maintenance agreement with American Pool to provide certified pool operator services for our pool system in the amount of $14,400, and I think that is either equal to or about a $400 increase from previous year, and they've been doing it, I think, since 2012 at our school.
Thanks, Greg. Mr. Kashani, could you take us through student services?
Gladly. 7.01, we will be voting to approve the Adelphoi Education Services Agreement for 2018-2019, which makes alternative placement services available if needed for students. No commitment to enroll students, but it's there if we need it. 7.02, we will be voting to approve an updated discipline code for 2018-2019. And Greg, I think you jinxed my computer. So
You should be able to get into the Google copy of your, if you're into your.
Merci. All right. So there are some changes, though, some differences in the new discipline code, which are listed. We will also be voting to approve the new student handbook. Again, some notable changes there for the high school, middle school.
Do you want to comment on the student handbook?
Yeah, well, can I make on the discipline code? So we had received a couple of questions or comments around some of the language within that. So the red line version is up there. We did not make any changes for tonight, but just to share with the board. So one was a comment regarding the search policy and just certain language. We had something related to terroristic threats and acts. There's other aspects of the discipline code where the language has probably been there since the initial writing of the discipline code decades ago, and anytime you get a new set of eyes, you just might find a better way to word something. So we'll make some of those changes. If they're not substantive changes, you'll see them. I'll reflect them in a weekly update. You'll see them in the red line version the next time. One included a citation, for example, to the language which forms the basis for the terroristic threats and acts, which is part of, it's not Pine-Richland local language, it's Pennsylvania language, and so it provides a citation there. So again, if there are other areas or specific places where the language of the discipline code, you have input, or any substantive input for that matter, please let us know so we can discuss, review, and then bring that forward for action at the next meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. So in 7.03 as well, the updated student handbook. So there's a reference to Google Classroom in addition to Blackboard. There's some changes to cafeteria meal plan updates, club and activity updates, and some other important stuff there as well. 7.04, we will be voting to approve a donation from the Gene Haas Foundation, a grant specifically of $6,000. It looks like 2/3 of that will be transferred to Prof, and the remaining will be transferred to the student school activities account for the TSA.
Right, the 2/3 to Prof is a scholarship that's given out, and so they're continuing that. This is, I think in addition, it's not for this year, it's for the years to come up. And because Prof is giving out a scholarship through Haas. And then the other part, I think last year, or the last time the Haas Foundation donated, the Technology Education Department purchased a robotic arm with that money.
7.05 will be a motion we'll be voting on to approve the revised ticketing service agreement with the board-approved booster organizations.
Mr. Kashani, if I could have Dr. Pasquinelli provide a little more background on this item.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Miller. This is something we've been working with the athletic department and booster groups, and talking about updating this ticketing service agreement. So, back in 2012, it was initially approved by the board, and the concept was to bring some additional revenue into the booster groups, and also often, we didn't have staff to collect tickets for some of the smaller venues. So it was the booster group said, hey, if we take this on, can we make some money off of this? And there was a percentage of that revenue that was to come back to the district. So we did some research over time. Limited revenue has come in to the district through this ticket agreement, and we see an opportunity to reduce the cost of the tickets for families to come into smaller venues. Again, this is not, we still take care of football, boys and girls basketball, but some of the smaller venues like lacrosse games, soccer games, swimming meets, the booster groups would take full ownership through the ticketing agreement. The cost would be limited, $3 for adults, $1 for all students. Current practice is, with the current ticketing agreement, that there's a charge for visiting teams, but there's not a charge for Pine-Richland residents. That didn't feel great to us as visitors were coming into venues to determine who gets charged, who doesn't. So we said a reasonable rate of $3 for all adults, $1 for students, and then an opportunity for Pine-Richland families or any other family that would be interested in a season pass to cut those costs in half. So we put that together in this agreement for you to review and provide any feedback. Once approved, then we would roll that into next season with all of our booster groups.
Thank you for the background.
Okay, 7.06, we will be voting to accept another donation, this time this for various components of lighting. And then 7.07, approving a foreign exchange program. And it looks like that's it.
And PAX is new to us, I know. And thank you for a quick reaction on that. I'm going to make a recommendation, if I could, before we move to the next section, and I'll go back up to actually building and grounds. Greg or the rest of the board, I'm going to recommend we put those items for buildings and grounds into a consent agenda, if that makes sense, for our voting meeting. And if there is any objection at the time, you find something later or want to know more about Ms. Bucknam's combi oven, we can pull it out on the night of the meeting. But I mean, that's in all seriousness. If at any time there is something, I'd emphasize that. And for student services, I'd recommend, Ms. Williams, 702 and 703 discipline code and student handbooks to be separated out, and then a consent agenda for the other items, including 7.01. So consent for 701 and then 704 through 7. Does that make sense?
I consent.
Yeah. More consent. Thank you. All right, fantastic. Ms. Goebel, staff services, please.
Item 8.01, the board will be presented with a motion to approve a proposed list of personnel items that we'll see attached. And item 8.02 will be presented with a motion to approve the student teachers as attached, and currently there's 2 there. I don't know if that'll be the extent of them, but there'll be a list. And that's it for staff services.
For student teachers, are we currently just looking at Slippery Rock right now, or is that just a coincidence?
That's just a coincidence. Again, they seem to be starting to ask for their requests earlier and earlier, because it is generally a first come, first serve.
Okay.
When we get those requests and send them out to teachers. So Slippery Rock is a university for whom we have a
long-standing relationship with, and we do receive a number of them from that university, but it just so happens to be that that's who came in this time.
And that policy definitely guides our decision-making to keep that balance around student teachers across our
Absolutely.
district, so we do track that closely.
Is it also a coincidence they're both Italian?
Part of the policy as well.
I'm just, no call.
Mark teaching's more visual now. It works for me, right?
Just curious.
Okay, Mr. Moy, Operational Services, please.
Item 9.01 is an informational item. Marshall Protection Incorporated, security company, for board consideration at the regular May meeting. Motion to approve the attached agreement with Marshall Protection to provide supplementary security services for the district.
Thank you. Under board business, at our voting meeting, we will be voting to elect a school treasurer. Unlike the rest of our officers, school treasurer is listed separately in the school code and serves a term from July to June. I will ask Mr. Kashani if would you accept the nomination if one were made at the next meeting?
I would if one were made.
The eligibility is listed there, but I believe all current board members would meet that eligibility. Item 10.02 is certification of PSBA voting delegates, which we'll vote on at the next meeting. So I will give you some background, and it segues a little bit into 10.03, the PASA and PSBA School Leadership Conference. PSBA is our professional association for school boards, has an agenda specifically around their legislative lobby. And we talked about this a little bit as a board when we voted to pass a resolution against, I think that was Senate Bill 2, earlier this year. That agenda is our agenda. It is not their agenda. And it becomes our agenda through our representation and delegates to their legislative conference where that's set. Historically, we have sent no 2 members to the conference to vote. Our PSBA liaison, I believe is the official term, for Dr. Meyer, has typically been one of those delegates and possibly one other. So that's just by way of what we've done in the past, and it by no means is what we need to do going forward. I'm going to just go right from there right into, so we will name those delegates who have the authority to vote on behalf of Pine-Richland School District, on behalf of our board in establishing that agenda. Item 10.03 is the PASA, PSBA School Leadership Conference. PASA is the Pennsylvania Association of School Administrators, so that would be the analogous to Superintendents, Assistant Superintendents, Professional Association. Their conference takes place the same time as the main PSBA conference. So that weekend really, or sort of end of a week in October, really has sort of 3 things going on. There's the PSBA and PASA conference, which have separate tracks for the breakouts, but a lot of commonalities in terms of the student showcase or the education demonstrations and the big headline speakers and keynote speakers. And at the end of that conference is when there's the more formal delegates from the PSBA who meet and establish the legislative agenda. So I will mention all that. On our voting meeting next week, the way it's written here, and I think I agree with that wording, we will vote for the board to approve attendance of any interested board member, to leave that open for the October conference. At least that's the way it's worded. Was that the intention, or to name specifically at this time?
This is how we had worded it for last year.
We've done it
so,
that way in
yeah.
the past as well. The certification of the voting delegates will put names in for those and to pass along to PSBA. More importantly on that topic of conferences is sort of the idea of professional development and continuing education for board members. One board member had mentioned the PAGE conference, which is taking place locally in Cranberry actually this fall. And I should mention Mrs. Oland, on behalf of the Pine-Richland chapter of PAGE, has offered to supplement the registration fees for board members and/or administrators who want to attend. These are 2 conference opportunities. There are certainly many more opportunities for professional development and conferences that will arise. I thought it good and important to sort of reflect before we all sort of run out and find our favorite conference and want to sign up. To mention one, we do have a budget for professional development continuing ed, and we have expanded that this year for board members, specifically with the mind we thought there would be a greater interest with many new board members. But I would also say that I think the best practice is that the opportunities, and when we take advantage of them, they be aligned with our strategic plan, aligned with our board goals. Where do we want to work on? What areas should we be working on now as a board, and what areas fit best with our objectives? So rather than just sort of saying, well, I really like this, I want to go to that conference. So I welcome any thoughts and would say sort of in general, even if not this evening, thoughts on additional conferences should certainly be brought up, engaged. I want to sort of put them in the hopper for all to see, so I wanted to mention that PAGE conference as well. And I wanted to mention the School Leadership Conference so that they're in everyone's mind. I did have the opportunity to go a little further to talk to Ms. Misbach about the PSBA School Leadership Conference, and I'll share some of those thoughts with the board now. I've attended for the past 2 years, so it's not something I've done my entire time on the board. I am glad that I finally began to attend, and it really just took, resolving logistical challenge. It is a conference that involves travel, involves overnight stays. You can do it with just 2 nights, and get a lot out of it. I do get a lot out of it. I think it's a great introduction. It's a great introduction to the role of the PSBA. Covers a lot of topics, a lot of general topics, a lot of topics that would be interest to newer board members, but also a lot of topics that you might want to dig a little deeper on, and that could be a legal topic, it could be a specific issue of student achievement, it could be sort of wellness initiatives or school start times. There's a variety of seminars and breakout sessions that cover enough topic area to meet, I think, any wide-scale interest. So as a starting point, I really do support it and endorse it. In fact, I would go so far as to say, for me, it is a respite, if you will. I enjoy the time away now that my family allows that, and I find myself returning energized because there are actually a number of opportunities to see students there. The Student Showcase, which involves a number of student projects, and then students provide some just tremendous entertainment in the evenings as well. So it is an energizing opportunity for me that I value and would encourage you to look into it. But I recognize logistically it can be challenging, so there may be the need to look at other opportunities. Christine had mentioned when you look at PSBA's website now, they are a little bit late in rolling out, I think, their new continuing education initiative, which will involve a somewhat regimented course structure. I know there's 100 levels, 200 levels. We got something, a number of us, back in January, February, and they said sort of stand by. I haven't heard anything since. Ms. Williams?
It is up now, and it is available for board members to go on. You have to, I believe what you received were logins and passwords to be able to get in and sign up for those. I've
So
already
I-
done 2 courses, so they are available for you to go into.
Fantastic. I had not checked. We were just talking about this, Christine and I. So I mentioned that as well, and I think that might be something we want to reflect back, Barb, make sure all board members have their login information again and are able to access that. So there are a wide variety of opportunities, both sort of self-study, conferences with a little bit of travel, conferences with not much travel at all that are open and available to us. I want to make sure that we have a proper forum to reflect and discuss those opportunities and make sure they're aligned. Anybody have anything else to add? Or?
I'm just going to, so to your first point, with professional staff, there are hundreds, thousands of conference opportunities. So we are proud that we've invested more money into registration travel, but the reality is there's still limited funds for registration travel. And so we often will ask, which department is really in a priority based upon something that's happening with the district, and we try to use that to help guide some of our decisions. How can what's learned at the conference add value, not just for the person who heard it, but bring it back and have a broader impact within the district? So that's part of what impacts us. But I wanted to share as feedback to the board, we're also trying, we have not received the help we need yet from PDE to determine how we can create a new board member certification, training, orientation, locally homegrown. They agree that they talked about it, but when we asked for specific details, they haven't yet been able to tell us what do we need to do to accomplish that. So that was feedback the board gave to me to try to get our onboarding and training process to receive that certification. We're on it. We just can't do anything until they provide some direction, which we can't get at this point.
So that really, nobody can resign, because there'll be a new board member until we have that in place. That could be years, my understanding is from PD.
It's possible.
Yeah, so.
Flexible instructional days, or it could be just gone and we never know about it.
And finally, item 10.04 will be a motion to approve the attendance of Barb Williams, our school board secretary, at the PSBA School Board Secretaries Conference in August. Reports.
No additional reports.
Anyone have anything to share from the board? We'll have our second recognition of visitors. Seeing how there are none, we'll move to adjourn the meeting, and the board will be meeting executive session to discuss a personnel item. Thank you all. Have a good evening.